Justin Beheading, and welcome back to the headquarters. It's great to have you guys back here. Thanks for clicking on my video. And so today I present a new experimental horror film called The Seeding. The Seeding is an art house experimental folk horror movie directed by Barnaby Clay. It's about a man named Wyndham, a photographer who goes out to the desert to take pictures of an eclipse when he finds this young child just stranded out in the desert and decides to help him find his parents. But that child, who is also a bit on the strange side, leads him out farther into the desert than he was expecting to go, and even takes him so far away that he doesn't even know where his car is or where he is, and that kid eventually wanders off and just leaves him there. He finds this house deep down in a canyon, and the occupant of that house is a young woman named Alina, who has seemingly been there for several years, has been stuck down in this canyon, and he goes down there because, of course, he's looking for help. He's looking for anyone that can help him with figuring out how to get back to his car, and so he decides to go down this canyon. There's a ladder that he's able to take to get down to the bottom. He decides to talk to Alina about this in the hopes that she can lead him back to his car. However, she ends up insisting on him staying the night and even feeds him food, or tries to actually. But soon he finds when he gets out there in the morning, that ladder has disappeared and he has no way of getting out of that canyon other than to possibly either to climb up the canyon, which is hard enough as it is, to get to this other ladder that's farther away and much further up, or stay in the canyon. But he also finds that there's these Children of the Corn-esque kids who are the ones that pull up the ladder, and they at one point offer him a rope that he ties around his waist and both of his legs, and he goes on the assumption that they're actually going to help him, these strange-looking children who are not suspicious at all, of course. And I mean, that essentially becomes the dynamic of the movie. You have these kids up there on this canyon that constantly taunt Wyndham, but you have the woman Alina who seems to have some control over them in some way. Like at one point she says a random word that sounds like it's in a different language, and later when Wyndham asks her about what he said to them to get them to stop, she just said, "Oh, I said stop," and then he says in what language. And so the movie has kind of a problem with kind of showing you its hand at times while also trying to be aloof and mysterious. Some of the good qualities about this film are it does have some very experimental and trippy visuals. It's clear that the director himself must have come from a experimental film background before this one. And I mean, there's a lot of it that feels very Lynchian even. And there's even things like they have transition shots that typically focus on a bowl of food that progressively over the course of the film gets more and more rotten and covered in mold. And each one has a title card above them which details the different stages of the moon. And the movie has also this very creepy vibe to it. And it also has a pretty pervasive score, which is also full of dread and just kind of gets you to feel more tense and stressful throughout the film. However, there is a point when things kind of begin to meander with this film. You know, you have this repetition where these kids constantly bring food and supplies of sorts to Wyndham and Alina. However, we don't ever find out where they get this food from. At one point, they give them a live chicken, which they do kill and eat. But it's like, where are they getting this from in the middle of the desert? And how are these kids surviving? And you know, you think that there's some kind of supernatural thing, but by the end, I'm not even sure if it was even that going on. Like, seriously, there's a lot in this film that I'm not sure entirely makes sense. And I know some of that is being kept ambiguous to make us as the audience think about these things and question them. But it's either they give you too much information or not enough. It's this weird balancing act that Barnaby Clay struggles with in this movie, you know. And then you also have the character of Alina, who's this strange, you know, person who it seems like she's been stranded there by these kids, but then you'll have Wyndham constantly asking questions like, how long have you been out here? You know, do you just not care anymore? Like, what's going on? He has questions, that she never quite answers, or if she does, it's in a very like cryptic way that doesn't make any kind of sense, even slightly. And I also gotta say, something that I never addressed with Founders Day was that the sound mix with that film had this weird push-pull where you would have the audio on the dialogue would be mixed so low, but then the music would be mixed so loud, so I would be sitting there having to tinker with my computer speaker trying to listen to what the characters are saying in that movie, only to have to immediately turn the music down because of how blaring it was. But the difference is that with that movie I could actually understand what was being said once I did turn it up. But with the seating, the sound mix is so bad that sometimes I can't really understand what the actors are saying, because most of what they're saying is almost like they're mumbling it or murmuring it. Especially Alina does that a lot, where I can barely... And then sometimes when you have the music in there, it makes it even worse. Or hell, there's a scene where Alina is yelling, and the music and her yelling are at the same volume, so I could barely hear what she was saying. But I do have to give some praise to the visuals, because it is a very visually stunning movie. The canyon itself allows for a lot of possibilities. There's chalk drawings that are on the canyon walls that actually paint a picture in and of themselves and make you wonder where that came from. And then you also have the set design in the house that Alina and Wyndham stay in that kind of implies that there's something up with Alina, that because she doesn't seem to know anything much about the modern world or anything, and she's just been out there this whole time. And there's a lot of things that she uses that are very old school. I mean, I will say this: I was not a fan of last year's Ennis Men. Is that how you say it? Ennis Men. I was not a fan of that movie. I felt like a lot of it was just the main character wandering around and doing a lot of monotonous things. And then when crazy things did start to happen, well, for one thing, that movie would constantly have those crazy things disappear and not show up for a while. And when they would appear, the lead actress would never react to them. You know, whether it was she had her back turned or she was looking directly at him, she would never react. And those things never came close to terrorizing her. And so with this movie, they do some of that. It feels a lot like Ennis Men if things were happening. It's the kind of movie where, in spite of the things that were frustrating, I was definitely with it enough to get to the end and see how all this was going to tie together. And when the ending did happen, once again, I found myself with even more questions, and I wondered what was the point of everything that happened before that ending. The way that it ended just was not satisfactory, nor was the film before this. I guess for the rating for this one, I would have to give it a 5 out of 10. Well, guys, that's the review. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in today. Have you seen The Seating? What did you think about it? Or what's your favorite folk horror movie? Whatever it is or whatever you thought, leave a comment down below, and I hope to welcome you guys back to the headquarters soon.